tomorrow night. Now, moving on, Kenya, once celebrated as a beacon of democracy and freedom in the region, is now grappling with a chilling surge in abductions. Activists warn the nation is veering into dangerous territory. At the height of the Gen Z protests, political activist Bob Njagi and two brothers, now known as the Kitengela Three, endured 32 grueling days in captivity. Their release coincided with the swearing-in of the new Inspector General of Police, Douglas Kanja, and the sentencing of his predecessor, Acting IG Gilbert Masengeli. Who are the masterminds behind these abductions? How did Bob Njagi survive his harrowing ordeal? In this exclusive and intimate conversation, KTN's investigations editor, Francis Ontomwa, delves deep into Njagi's story. The deep dive.
Political activist Bob Njagi endured 32 days in captivity, held incommunicado by suspected state operatives. Ambushed with brutal force while boarding a public vehicle, he disappeared the same day two brothers, Aslam and Jamil Longton, were abducted in Kitengela, an incident that ignited public outrage and earned them the label the Kitengela Three. Isolated and weakened, Njagi's health deteriorated, yet his spirit remained unbroken. Near midnight on September 20th, 2024, two masked men replaced his handcuffs with plastic ties, releasing him near a local police station. Despite his ordeal, Njagi's determination for a better Kenya endures. Today, he joins the deep dive for an intimate and filtered conversation. Bob, thank you for speaking to the deep dive.
Thank you for having me.
You met your fourth born for the first time after your 32 days in captivity. Please describe to me the reunion. How was it like?
Well, it was a very emotional moment for me because during my time in abduction, I honestly did not believe I'd be able to see my daughter. Isabella was born on the 11th of September. I was abducted on the 19th of August and released on the 20th of September. So before then, I was still making plans on how to take her mom to hospital, you know, preparing for the baby, buying the clothes, preparing for hospital bills. And then all of a sudden this happened. So it was a very difficult moment for all of us because at that time is when I think she needed me most and I was not present for her and the baby. But I thank God that Isabella was born healthy and she's well even right now. So the first time I saw her was actually about 2 weeks after I was released because I was still in medication, doing some psychosocial support before, you know, going back to my family. I met her for the first time and it was one of the most glorifying moments, most rewarding moments. Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so I really appreciate for the gift.
Let's spin it back a little to where it all started. Who did men get into a car, you are headed home, and they abduct you? Please tell me more.
I was headed home on the night of 19th of August. I had just come from CBD Nairobi, where we had I had an engagement at the Kamkunji police station with one of Mheshimiwa, I think you know, Honorable Jimmy Wanjigi. On my way back home from town at about 10:30 p.m. to 11 p.m., I was in a public service vehicle, and when the vehicle reached Mlolongo, which is halfway between Nairobi and Kitengela, where I stay, 4 masked and hooded men got into the vehicle when we stopped at Mlolongo. And they came directly towards me shouting in Swahili, "Huyu ako na bunduki," which means I have a gun. And I was very alarmed because I don't own a gun, I don't possess one. And so I tried to figure out what was happening. On that day, on the same day, 2 of my colleagues had been abducted during the day in the morning at around midday. So I was already aware that I am being followed. So by the time they got to me, I was kind of not very shocked what was happening. But at the same time, I was very alarmed because I didn't know what would come after this. I was abducted, very physically, violently abused, beaten up, and taken into a vehicle that was waiting just outside the public service vehicle. We drove, once inside the vehicle, we drove for close to an hour while I was still being tortured inside the car, okay? So I could not tell which direction we were headed. Until we got to some place, we stopped over, and I realized there was another vehicle that was waiting where we stopped. And some other men were also talking, having a conversation with the guys who had abducted me. And that was then when I was told to alight. I was blindfolded, handcuffed at the back, and then whisked into a second vehicle. We drove around for another 30 minutes, plus or minus, until we got to our destination, which is a place where I had been held.
At that point, did you try to question what was really happening, and what was the response like from these people?
Yes, I did. In fact, they asked me a few questions while inside the car, if I know so and so. So I realized this is in relation to the protest and the demonstrations that were happening. Some of them actually told me that by 2 a.m. in the morning, I would be dead. I would be in River Yala. So I could not have time to question much, you know. I left it to the will of God. I didn't know what would happen.
Getting to the destination.
What happened?
What was going through your mind?
At that time, I knew I've been abducted because the people who have arrested me have not identified themselves. Of course, they are behaving like police because they have walkie-talkies, they have handcuffs, right? They're talking in, like policemen and women. Policemen, sorry, because there are no women who were there. When we got to the destination, I was taken into a building and into a small room, the size of 6 foot by 4 foot, because I'm 6 by 1, so I could tell how big the room was. And I was asked to sit down with my hand still handcuffed at the back and blindfolded, and that's where I stayed for the next 2 days, for about 48 hours. I was left on the floor, no food to eat. I was only being given some water once in a while by one of the men who would come into the room and give me the water orally, you know. After 2 days, they came into the building, the same room. They put the handcuffs now in the front and then moved me from that room to a second room. And that is the room where I stayed for 30 days until when I was released.
During the 32 days, handcuffed in a dark room, I'm just wondering mentally, what kept you going?
What kept me going was I had to keep the hope alive, you know, because at that moment there was nothing you can hold on to. I'm in captivity. I'm held incommunicado. Couldn't talk to anyone day or night. The room is dark. The food rations that were being given were not enough to even give us energy. So what kept me going first was my family. I used to pray a lot. I used to remember my people who have left outside, and I was always hoping that I would get a second chance to see them again. I would also exercise a lot at night. I used to keep myself mentally active by exercising, and that got my mind a bit bit stable. I prayed a lot. You know, at that time, it's only you and God and your God. So I also got very spiritual. And I believe that prayers do work. And many Kenyans also prayed for me. I believe their prayers too also worked miracles.
Did you identify any faces during that period? And again, what was the communication like?
No, the men who were holding us were completely masked. Yeah, they had balaclavas. Now, when we were inside the building, when they opened the door, you cannot tell the face. You could only see the body, you know. But I could not positively identify these men because I did not see them off, you know, without the masks. Yeah, but I could tell their faces.
Yeah. To this date, have you been able to identify the people behind this abduction and what they were targeting?
I have not been able to identify specifically the persons who abducted me, but I know for sure that I believe that those who abducted me must have been persons, either men from the state, and I believe they were police officers, but from some form of, I don't know what kind of agency it is. But these were officers, yes.
So how did freedom finally come to you? How did you break loose of this captivity?
I think, well, during my arrest, so many people came out to call for freedom, for a release. From the media itself gave this story a very big publicity. The Law Society of Kenya, they actually took the Inspector General of Police to court on a habeas corpus, which means that they need to produce me. And I think the pressure that came from the human rights organizations, my colleagues from the Free Kenya movement, my family as well, they put up a lot of pressure on the state. Coincidentally, that the day we were released was the same day that the Inspector General was meant to present himself to prison. And that also speaks volumes as to there being a conspiracy. If the state did not abduct me, then why haven't they ever asked me to even record a statement?
Essentially, you're saying this wasn't a coincidence.
It was not a coincidence. I've never been asked to even record a statement since my release. Isn't the state interested of knowing who abducted me, or do they know who abducted me? You know, it's very strange that a month down the lane, 3 people were abducted, and none of these 3 people have been asked by the DCI to come and assist them in investigations to find out who then had abducted us. So it points to a direction that probably they know exactly who had abducted us.
Let's revisit briefly the public support that you've just mentioned.
Yeah.
What impact do you think that had when you had Kenyans and even the media rallying behind you?
I think without that support, I would not be back alive. Yeah, so I really thank Kenyans and everybody who either tweeted or who, you know, prayed for us, because I think that was the pressure that came from all corners that compelled those who had abducted us to release us.
In retrospect, Bob, how did you survive on a meal a day?
It's difficult, Francis. I lost within those 32 days, I lost 12 kgs. So you can imagine the rate at which one is malnutritioned. I was surviving barely on a plate of ugali and cabbage, and at times rice and maharagwe, which was just boiled and presented to you as food. So the ration was very small. I would remember I was very hungry at night. I would be having hunger pangs, but you can't complain and you can't ask for more. So I think what kept me going then was that I would, normally I do fast for 40 days every year. So I think I got into a fasting mode. Yeah, I turned it around and assumed I'm fasting. So when you fast, you have less food. And I think the fasting turned into prayers, and then things happen.
What are some of the biggest lessons that you picked from that dark, small room when you got out?
Freedom is very important. Freedom is one of the most important things you could ever have. Even without money, as long as you're free to see your people, to talk to your family, is one of the most important things in life. Yeah, and it's normally taken for granted when you're out here. But when you don't have it, then that's when you realize how important freedom is.
Let's now discuss the work that you do as an activist.
Yes.
Let's start from, what does Free Kenya movement do, and when was it born, and what are your goals?
Free Kenya movement was initiated in 2018. At that time, we had the 2018 finance bill that introduced VAT on petroleum products for the first time. So we went to the streets to mobilize Kenyans to oppose, to mobilize the MPs to oppose the finance bill. And we had a procession outside Parliament. Unfortunately, the bill was passed. And it was from that time we realized that the institution called Parliament is not serving the interest of the people. And so we thought that there is need for a movement by Kenyans to push for changes within the country. So we began with what we're calling a popular initiative, a referendum. And at that time, we wanted to bring down the cost of living by coming up with amendments in the Constitution that would safeguard the common man from the high taxation. And so we targeted specific items that we thought are basic and essential items that government should not tax, because the common man depends on those items for their survival.
What's the status of this popular initiative? Have you managed to amass enough signatures for this process?
We have more than 300,000 signatures, and these are legitimate signatures because we go person to person on the ground. Our target is to reach up to 3 million signatures, hopefully before the end of this year, and so that we can push for a referendum by next year, 2025. Yes.
But people would wonder, you've just come from captivity, but you're still pushing on with this agenda. Really, don't you fear the risks that come with it?
Yeah, the risks are there, especially when we go out to collect signatures. We're normally met with a lot of resistance by the police. They tear gas us, they stop us, they arrest us. This is a state that is becoming very oppressive and denying us even our rights to assemble. But nonetheless, we cannot stop, because I always say that even the founders of this country, if they had relented in the struggle, we would not be having a free country today. So it is our turn to also do what is necessary to ensure that we have a better tomorrow and today. Yeah.
If you had a chance to fix one issue in Kenya that you feel is problematic, what would that be?
Tribalism. I think that is the root cause of all the problems that we're going through.
Why so?
Well, tribalism is a foundation of corruption, because the trends in the country is such that it has eaten into the fiber of the society, so much so that we are basing everything based on our tribes as a country, whereas I think that we should be a merit-based society. For instance, if you look at the appointments of leaders in government, you will see that they will opt to satisfy tribal arrangements vis-a-vis going for a merit-based kind of leadership. So I believe that tribalism is one of the issues that has bedeviled this country.
You mentioned before the importance of forgiveness and healing. How does this resonate with your current life?
Forgiveness is, it must come naturally, because if you cannot forgive, then you cannot expect to be forgiven as well. When you forgive, you let go. You set yourself free. When you don't forgive, then you hold bitterness inside, which again is not good. Those who did, my captors, those who captured me, I have said unto them, I have forgiven them completely. I hope that, because I know they were following orders. The people who captured me were following orders. Clearly they were receiving phone calls from somebody. There are people who are perhaps employed to do what they're doing. to fend for their own families. But I'd want to tell them that that is not the right way to earn a living.
What is your process of healing like at the moment after going through all this?
It's not easy. I think first and foremost, talking is part of the healing. Like I'm sharing my story with you today. It helps me to deal with what happened. I'm also exercising a lot. Physical exercise helps to build my mental strength. I'm also integrating back into society, going back to my work routines, keeping myself busy, doing what I used to do. So that has been healing. And
And how was your childhood like? And did it have any way in shaping the person that you are today?
Very much so. I was raised up I was born in Nairobi, in South B, at Mata Hospital. So I've grown up in the city with basically where all communities are there present. So this has helped me to be more of a nationalistic kind of person, not bent towards tribal kind of affiliations. I went to Nairobi Primary School, Our Lady of Mercy Primary School. I was in the Nairobi Secondary School, which is a national school. I had done hotel management as my career in Andrew Hardy College. I'm also a diploma student in French. I've traveled outside the country a bit. My career actually was in hotel management.
How did you end up then in activism?
Well, you see, Kenyans are hardworking people, but if the results of our hard work ends up in high taxation, corruption, then it means that even the private sector is not safe. I had to make a choice. Should I continue and pursue my career as a hotelier, or should I get into this politics that is determining our destiny? So in around 2012, I decided, let me get into politics. At that time, I went into the Orange Democratic Movement. In 2014, I was elected as the Deputy Director of Elections for ODM National. I was deputizing Junaid Mohammed for about 9 years. So it is at that time then I learned the ropes in politics, and I appreciate the former Prime Minister because through that induction I got to understand how politics is done in the country. I vied for Member of Parliament twice, in 2017 and in 2022 in Kajiado East. Unfortunately, again, we had issues with the elections management, and that's one of the reasons we are pushing for a popular initiative so as to come up with electoral integrity.
And is there an intersection between politics and activism? And are you planning to plunge further into politics in the days to come?
There is actually, I think most politicians or leaders should also be activists, because when you're agitating for the rights of your people, you're an activist in a way, but also you're providing solutions. The difference between a leader and an activist is a leader will provide solutions, but an activist may just point out at the issues in the society. So I decided that more than activism, it is better to also lead and be part of creating solutions for the people.
Despite all that you've gone through, are you still hopeful for a better Kenya?
Indeed, very hopeful. But for that to be realized, a lot has to change. So if we want a better Kenya, then we have to fight for a better Kenya. And that's why we are in these agitations. You can see the demonstrations, the protests. We don't go out to the streets because we enjoy going out to the streets. No. It's actually you're putting your life at risk.
What's your assessment of freedoms of expression in Kenya now and a few years back?
I think we are going backwards. We are going back towards the previous days, when we had like a one-party state where the rights, freedoms were limited. We have a progressive constitution, but also they say that a constitution is only as good as those who implement it.
Are there moments that you've questioned whether it's worth what you're doing?
So many times. So many times I've asked myself whether even losing my life is worth it. But I believe this is a path which I'm on. And many other leaders have come before us, and they've had their time, and they've done their contributions to this country. If I would die because of fighting for my country, then that would be a better way to go than being hit by a car on the road or, any other way.
Who inspires you, Bob?
I'm inspired by the likes of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso. I'm inspired by the likes of Kwame Nkrumah. I'm inspired by leaders like even Professor Lumumba right here in Kenya. I like the kind of thinking and ideology that such kind of men have about Pan-Africanism, about human dignity, respect for the rule of law, and constitutionalism. These are the principles and values that I look up to. Yeah.
If you had an opportunity to advise 21-year-old Bob Njagi, what would you tell him?
I would tell him that the road to freedom is not easy. Because when you start, you think that perhaps within a week or two, we will have accomplished our goal. But like Nelson Mandela said, it's a long walk to freedom. Looking back, I would say that I wish I had done this earlier or started this before, because perhaps we would have made more accomplishments by now. It is the worst thing to stay back and not proactively take part in civic activities. The moment Kenyans realize that it is your civic duty to participate in governance and call out bad leaders, then we shall have a more informed society and a better country for all. Yeah.
Thank you, Bob, for speaking to The Deep Dive and for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. Asante sana.
Asante sana.